back to the One Nation of Gamers Summer Circuit Feature Tournament number 4. This is the fourth and final feature tournament, which means after this weekend, we will have our 7th and 8th. The final players will be joining us at the Grand Finals at PAX. Once again, I'm TJ, joined by the Mayor of Value Town himself, Trump. Trump, are you enjoying yourself so far? Are you enjoying these matches?
Yeah, it's good. Good to look at them, see what my competition at PAX might be.
Yeah, and so far we've seen some pretty nice matches. Chalky from one side, he 3-0'd his opponent Impact in the first round. Soundstorm had a little bit of a more grueling and close matchup against his opponent Privet, going 3-2 in that series. So both these players sort of had different paths to get to this winter match, but sort of start over from scratch here. Chalky, his lineup will have to be tested against a little bit different decks, as Soundstorm is bringing that really interesting Paladin deck that we talked about earlier. What are your thoughts on that Paladin deck after seeing it in action in that last matchup, Trump?
I'm really excited to see this matchup. Chalky clearly brought his 3 decks with a strong nod towards Patron Warrior. He's brought 3 decks which he believes will go at least 50% against Patron Warrior, or have an advantage, I assume. And Silent Storm didn't bring Patron Warrior, so this is where we get to see the two philosophies clash. Silent Storm with his, alright, I'm not going to bring the #1 thought of deck in order to try to abuse the fact that some people will aim their lineups against Patron, versus Chalky, who is bringing the 3 kind of consistent, strong decks. Let's see which philosophy prevails here.
Yeah, and Chalky told me that he wants to thank his teammate Blackout for helping him with the mid-range Hunter list that he brought. Chalky has been a pretty big innovator with Hybrid and Face Hunter, but after talking it over with his teammate, I guess they sort of settled on the really heavy mid-range, which is not very characteristic of what Chalky usually goes with.
That's true. Like, of the decks I would expect to be characterized by Chalky, he's not brought the more aggressive Warlock, he's not brought the more aggressive Hunter, and he's playing a Patron, which is kind of controlling. So, Chalky showing his adaptability and just mastery of all the decks. Interesting call by Soundstorm already. He made the guy the hero power over the shield and main bot. Makes sense as a Paladin player. You really get in sync with just accepting to look ahead a turn and being like, okay, next turn I'm playing the mini bot and the hero power.
Yeah, realize that he doesn't have a turn 4 play otherwise. Also, you can apply a sort of a sneaky amount of pressure with the dudes in Paladin against Handlock. Normally this matchup is pretty favored for Paladin. It depends on some certain circumstances also, though. Big thing is whether or not the Paladin is running double equality or just a single equality. That helps the matchup a lot for Paladin. Also, cards like Aldor Peacekeeper are just really strong in the matchup. So I would say that Paladin's favored, but maybe we can get some more statistics from our good friend Monk.
For the longest time, I was thinking that this matchup was favored on the Handlock side, just because over the long-term game, Paladin doesn't have that much burst, and therefore they have a tough time filling up the board. If they ever fill out the board, you just Hellfire, and the Handlock has inevitability because they can just tap. But it turns out that the Paladin does have some pretty good tools, and they can actually put on a surprising amount of pressure. Like, we actually see the Paladin has used his hero power twice in this game so far already, but yet the Handlock is already feeling the pressure. The guys just are able to deal so much pressure sometimes.
Yeah, so it is a relatively small sample size, 16 games, but right now in competitive play, it's 50-50 for mid-range Paladin and Handlock. So it's a really close matchup based off of the statistics that we have, which is pretty interesting. I think the more control the Paladin gets, the better it is, because usually you have like Wild Pyromancers and double equalities, but that's really cool that it's a super close matchup. It's a really fun one to watch.
Right, it's kind of interesting, actually, because Face Paladin has one of the best matchups against Handlock. So it's like the more control you get, the better the matchup, the more aggro you get, the better the matchup. And if you take the middle of the road, the half measure is kind of weak, or not as strong, I should say.
Yeah, you have to sort of go full-on aggression or full-on for the late game. And in the very early stages of Hearthstone tournaments, back in like the ESGN Fight Night days, we saw a lot of Handlock versus Control Paladin. And Control Paladin usually came out on top in those matchups back then. Handlock hasn't changed too much. Paladin has changed a whole heck of a lot.
That's very true. This Paladin, thanks to the newish cards of Shield and Minibot, has managed to deal quite a lot of pressure and forced Shocky to use a Area of Effect card much earlier than he would have liked. I usually want to save that for the Quartermasters. I'm not sure whether or not... Well, like you said, Shocky's been on the stage with you casting, so you might be aware of Sunstorm's aversion to Quartermasters, yes?
Yep. And we can see Sunstorm's not really reluctant to push in because he knows he does have Equality Consecrate in his hand, which Chalky realizes is a big threat. So instead of like building up a wall there with Molten Giants, instead he decides to be proactive with the threat removal. But now Cybersoul's gone, and all of a sudden there's a Tyrion on the board. That's pretty scary.
Yep, that Tyrion is going to kind of be the big push. Jockey right now, he does have the Sun Fury, so if he taps, he's going to be able to play both and the Sun Fury, but Sunstorm just happens to have exactly the counter with the Equality and the Consecration. In fact, it's not quite going to be Sunstorm immediately wins if Chalky does the obvious Molten Sun Fury play, but it looks like it'll be a near lock.
Yeah. It's a tough turn because you know in the back of your mind if he has Equality, you'll probably lose, but you don't really have a choice because the threat of the Tyrion is just too much. So he might find a middle ground and play just one Molten, but I feel like if he was going to do that, he would have just not tapped and played the really safe route, kept himself at 14. So here we go. He's going to go for it.
Yep, definitely the correct play to make. And this is what gives Paladin the edge. Like sometimes, as Paladin, it feels like you have to have like two things when you try to win this matchup. One, you have to put on enough early pressure such that the Handlock is a little panicked and makes some non-optimal plays. Two, you have to have the finisher at the end. And in this case, Sunstorm had both. He's even going to be able to hold on to his Consecration thanks to those. Oh, wow, he found lethal.
Just win.
Okay.
Yeah. It depended on how the boombots landed, but he did have multiple opportunities to find lethal with that, and doesn't even need the Consecration because there's only 3 creatures on the board, so he realized that if he throws in both of his boombots, as long as both of them like don't go face for less than 4, so like 3, then he would have won. So I guess it didn't really matter at all. He had guaranteed lethal.
Yeah, a matchup like
well
that,
spotted.
when you see it, just makes you think, oh, well, Paladin versus Handlock. Man, Paladin sure is favored. But it usually doesn't go as rosy as that, having played both sides of the matchup a lot. Okay, whoa, Sunstorm has the ultimate ramp hand.
Wow. All he needs is like an Ancient of Lore, and all of a sudden he's in a great spot. One of the weaknesses to like keeping both Wild Growths with like an Innervate Emperor is that Emperor's not really hitting many targets. It's hard to remove because it comes out so early, but you don't really have many cards that do things.
That's right. I
Besides
think Sunstorm might want to consider tossing a Wild Growth, so he goes turn 2 Wild Growth and then Innervate Thaurissan. Did he keep it all?
4 keep.
Wow. Or maybe he mulliganed a card and was, well, no. Okay.
Nope.
He kept it all, I guess.
4 keep. Wow, it's crazy. But he does find a Paladin Shredder, which is actually really good because Paladin Shredder fights for board early on really nicely. And this is a bit awkward, though.
No, that
Next
makes
turn.
sense, because the next turn you also play Wild Growth, and then you go Thaurissan without the Innervate. But then the question is, like, okay, you discounted your Innervate, and meh.
Yeah. I feel like he could have afforded to like play a creature out with Innervate and forego the second Wild Growth.
Well,
It
if you're
felt
going
like
to keep 2 wild growths in your hand, then your plan is going to be to
just ramp.
wild growth. So
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And
Maybe
with
filter
this, you
mana though.
can in fact go with the Shredder next, and then into the Thorsan. You're not discounting many things, but all right,
All right, here we
you
go.
are going really fast. So Soundstorm's game plan is to draw Ancient of Lore.
That's a solid game plan, but a game plan that's not that reliable. If he doesn't draw Savage Roar, he's going to have a hard time to deal with this. Now, Druid is one of those classes where I feel like playing Frothing Berserker, like on turn 3, like on curve, is really strong. Reason being is because there are some matchups where Patrons are your primary win condition. There's some matchups where Frothing Berserker are your primary win condition. Of course, they can both be win conditions regardless, but in this matchup, I feel like the Patrons are enough to win you the game because Druids have such a tough time dealing with a lot of patrons that you can afford to use the Frothing Berserkers early on to try and apply pressure, and then use the Grim Patrons as sort of a checkmate tool once you know that the removal's gone.
Yeah, Chalky's taking this kind of as one of the rarer win conditions for Patron Warrior, where you simply play the efficient Frothing and the Frothing, and you try to win with early game minions. I think Druid is one of the classes which you can get away with doing this the most on.
Kalento does it a
Soundstorm's going to
lot.
have a tough time.
Yeah. And, I mean, this sort of ruins his turn. Drawing a second Innervate doesn't do anything. It's actually a pretty bad draw at this stage.
I thought that Savage Roar might have been an interesting play there. You go Wrath, and then you Savage Roar, and then you manage to kill both. But Soundstorm has instead opted to cycle, and he does find a rather good card. And this Wild Growth Thorson plan is not paying off as much since he drew the other Innervate.
Yeah, not at all. He can take solace in the fact that both Frothings are out of the way. So later on in the game, that's that much stuff he does not have to worry about playing around. He basically can think in his head, okay, as long as I play around Grim Patron stuff for the rest of the game, I'm good. Which Grim Patrons, you can more easily calculate the maximum amount of damage.
Yep. Ooh, big draw by Chalky there. You really needed to get another card to keep the card draw engine going. But here it's going to be more important to just deal with that. I wonder if he's going to burn a Whirlwind. No. Can you? Nah, you can't. So you're going to let the Emperor Thorson go twice.
Which is scary. But double Innervate is probably one of the worst hands that you can get. Patrons don't run Loatheb, so not going to really matter for the rest of the game. But reducing combo twice is going to allow for some crazy things in the late game.
That's right. Sunstorm's kind of got a mix of really good fortune in the sense that he has all the ramp, had all the ramp early, and then some bad fortune in the sense that he wasn't able to spend the Innervates, and then some good fortune in that Thorsan is surviving twice and top decking the Ancient of War. Kind of balances out to be rather interesting. In fact, it looks like Sunstorm might get a third discount from Emperor Thorsan. If he didn't have the 2 Innervate hand, he would surely be very far ahead.
Man, at this stage, it looks like Chalky just has to try and... Ooh, okay. I was thinking maybe he needs to try and draw more, but he'd rather have the discounts, so next turn he can start maybe propagating patrons or be able to draw for cheaper.
My gosh, is that lethal? Let's see. 14, 18, 28. Oh, I think that's lethal. Oh my gosh.
Wow. Yeah, it is. And he's literally going to empty... He could just empty his hand. He could double Innervate and Savage Roar Hero Power. He needed exactly those 8 cards to win on turn 9. No, not really, but that's a really scary win. And the double Wild Growth, it didn't look like it was going to pay off because he got double Innervate, but reducing the combo twice from Emperor allowed him to just make an absurd turn. Wow.
Wow.
things that Emperor Thorson can do. And looks like Soundstorm is going to take a 2-0 lead. So Chalky's he 3-0'd his first series. He had to be feeling pretty confident, but now he's down to a situation where he has to beat Handlock 3 times in a row. He does have a couple decks that are okay, like Mid-Range Hunter. Yeah, that's good against Handlock. Yeah, Handlock. Then he has Handlock, which is a 50-50, but then he has Patron, so that one's going to be rough.
Yep, this will be a tough one. Looks like Jockey's gonna just go with the toughest matchup first, get it out of the way. You're gonna have to spend all 3. There's no point in winning more. So 3-0, 3-2, it's all the same. So we'll see if we can take out the biggest obstacle first.
Chucky has been on the receiving end of matches that take a very long time. We casted for 9 hours straight yesterday because almost every series went to a 5-game set. So he realizes that he's going to throw his worst matchup out there first because he knows, like you said, he has to win with it anyway. To maybe cut down on some of the time of the matchup.
Oh, this is really interesting. We have a Coin Watcher's school of thought. Reynad's in a big support of this, and I'm actually strongly against this.
Soundstorm seems to do it actually a lot. Soundstorm, he does weird things with Handlock. A lot of times he does like very inefficient plays where with Watchers and Mortal Coils and taps early on. Like he floats mana where like other players would not float mana. He coin taps. Oh, like I'd say if I had the statistic, it'd probably be close to 50% of his Handlock games where he has the coin. It's really interesting. He's a very interesting player.
Yeah, it might be a closer, like, okay, I can see it happening in the case where he didn't already have the Twilight Drake and the Mountain Giant, but especially with all this stuff, boy, I would never do a play like that. But hey, it is very refreshing to see another line of play, and ultimately it probably isn't much of a difference.
Yep. Jockey managed to draw a decent amount early on. I feel like he's in a little bit better position than the Handlock players that we saw early on in the day. He just needs some removal. And he actually... Oh. Slam.
Yeah, it's going to be a nice, efficient way to deal with those minions.
Yeah.
Very good to get that triple draw off early. One of the key things of Patron Warrior, to be able to use the Acolyte, draw the 3. And one of the things about Handlock is you're always trying to use the Owl to be able to stop that from happening.
Mm-hmm. And he knows that this game is not going to go late enough for Jiraxis to be anything. And with Patron, a lot of times, you don't want to harass a Jiraxis because by that time you'll probably be fatiguing out. So... wow, this Emperor actually hits some pretty big dings. The only thing he's missing is like a Warsong Commander, and he's actually looking at a lot of damage next turn.
Yep, that's really good. Furthermore, it helps to get that Mountain Giant down. With a Slam and just a Whirlwind effect, it's going to kill it, and very good to draw that Acolyte of Pain with it, since you were planning to Whirlwind this turn as well. Just to finish out the dream, we're going to want to get an execute for Emperor Thorsten. If that Emperor Thorsten goes off twice, Jockey's in a lot of trouble.
Yes. And he will not have another draw after that, but, well, he will, but he won't be able to pick up and execute and he'll be able to use it. There's Warsong Commander. With 8 mana next turn, he could fit Warsong Commander, Frothing Berserker, Unstable Ghoul, double Unstable Ghoul, and Whirlwind. 5, 6, 7, 8, yeah. That's 3 Whirlwind effects.
Wow. Yeah, without a taunt, this could be really close to lethal. In fact, it would probably be lethal if no taunt were played.
But... Uh-oh. Soundstorm massed over the Dr. Boom. Only for a split second, though.
Oh man, I'm not sure if the Sludge Vulture is enough. Did clear, and getting that discount is a really big deal. If okay, oh boy. So if he goes Warsong, Frothing, Ghoul, 3, 5, 6, 8 Whirlwind. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minions on his side, 4 minions on Sandstorm's side. So 9 total minions. So each Whirlwind effect roughly it adds 9. So that's 27 for the uh, Frothing Berserker using very rough paper napkin math. But the problem is getting through the Sludge Belcher.
He can do it. If he works on Commander Frothing, he would have to throw the first unstable ghoul into the Sludge Belcher, then execute it, then throw the Acolyte of Pain into the slime, then Whirlwind. Or Whirlwind first, then throw the Acolyte of Pain into the slime, and then he would be able to hit face with Frothing.
Sounds like that misses a Whirlwind effect, though, because you're using the Execute instead of the Ghoul. In which case, you're only Whirlwinding for 14-ish damage. Wow, that's... Yeah. Silent Storm is like, what did you just do, Chalky? You just played 5-mana Patron. So this is pretty much the scariest thing in the world, because Silent Storm has probably... If my opponent plays a 5-mana Patron, I'm like, oh man, I'm about to die.
Yeah. Just taunt everything. Defender of Argus, Sun Fury Protector. At the same time, though, you don't want to put yourself into a situation where you have to play around worst case scenario to an extent. And I think that might
the interesting thing is if you worst case scenario and play like 2 of the 2 attack minions of the Sun Fury and the Argus, you might actually make the situation worse. Okay, the Lothab pretty much locks in this turn as not going to go off, but interestingly enough, Chalky's Whirlwind effects, 2 of them aren't spells. But can't get through all these taunt walls yet. If Chalky can survive until next turn, he's got the Warsong Commander, Frothing, Patron, Unstable, and Whirlwind, which is probably as good as it's gonna get. Looks like he will survive.
Yeah, he can.
Don't think that's
the Emperor,
going to be enough, though.
You can execute the Ancient.
Execute wouldn't be able to be played because it takes, let's see, 3, 7, 9. If he wants to play the Ghoul, it doesn't have the 1 mana. So I guess it's either Execute or Ghoul. I don't think without the second Whirlwind effect he has enough.
I was thinking he was going to execute something this turn for 6 mana, because all he did was armor up and floated 5.
Right.
But he decides not to. So is he going to be able to have it next turn?
Well,
Silent Storm.
He hit the Sludge Belcher in order to hit it again, and that's going to allow Grim Patron to split off of the ooze, the slime. It's one of those situations where you're going to lose the next turn, so you just do it, and like you don't know whether or not it's going to work, but you just do it anyways.
All right, so Chalky's been thinking about this for a while. The thing is, he has to go. He's already mousing over the Warsong Commander because he knows he has to start the turn immediately. He's dead next turn regardless, so he just has to go for it. And this is where the instincts of Patron have to kick in. And it's one of the interesting parts about playing Patron is a lot of times you have to pick on the fly.
He drew the other Frothing Berserker. That's it's possibly going to be more damage. I was actually thinking the Patron
would be more damage because you could bounce them all in.
Yeah, I mean, with this, I don't think you can get through all the taunts because the Patrons were necessary in order to deal with quite a few of these. Yeah, even the ooze is going to block a Frothing. Chalky's like, oh, there's no way I can get through all these taunts. Yeah, he's not going to get... I think Patron was a better chance at hitting lethal. I don't know whether or not he'd have it. Interesting picture to look at later.
Yeah.
Chalky's like, oh, stupid ooze. He still needs to get through 3 taunts, really. If only I could hit the face, I could do 48 damage.
Yeah, I think the Patron would have allowed him to fight on the board, because he would have been able to have 4 patrons, I think, because he wouldn't have been, or so he could have thrown those in to the extra taunts.
Right.
Well, he
Still,
would have
only
had
one
5 total.
whirlwind effect was going off. So, with all the 5 health minions, you would have to send 2 patrons apiece. Pretty sure you didn't have it either way, but patron looked to be the one that had the higher chance. And oh, Sunstorm won 3 in a row.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so Chalky was on the giving end of the 3-0 in his first matchup, and now on the receiving end of the 3-0. So Silent Storm is going to be the first player from Group A to move on to the semifinals on Sunday. So he guarantees himself $750, and now he only has to win 2 best-of-7 series to make it to the grand finals at PAX to face off against Trump, potentially. Trump said he's a
That's
little bit
right.
afraid of Soundstorm because with TGT coming out, it's going to be crazy. I mean, I'm pretty sure because the first day of PAX is on August. It's on the Friday, so August 28th. Blizzard did say that TGT is going to be released
August, yeah.
in
So,
August. It's
yeah.
possible that it might be August 29th or 30th. Or 31st, because there are 31 days in August, but it's doubtful. So I'd imagine it's going to be. But that's going to shake things up, especially since it's the last tournament, premier tournament that rewards World Championship points. And I know, Trump, you're definitely in the race for World Championship points, as well as Soundstorm and Chalky here. So that's going to be a big tournament to try and grab a bunch of points right at the end.
Yep. Well, Silent Storm managed to. I wonder if Silent Storm is going to be the player who didn't bring a warrior. I don't know what the other 4 players, which we're going to cast tomorrow, will
Mhm.
bring. But good for him. He manages to take a 3-0 without a warrior.
Yeah, so Chalky will move down to the elimination match. He's going to face off against the winner of our next match, which is going to be the losers match between Impact and Privet. But guys, we are going to go to a quick commercial break before we jump into that match. 2 more matches to go left today. Don't go anywhere, guys. More Summer Circuit action continues right after this.